Hi again guys, and welcome to another special projects build, but this time it's not a replica. It's a vehicle which you would probably assume would be real, but actually isn't. This is a custom build inspired by vehicles in real life, but not actually based on them directly. Now, back in the day, of course, there was extreme rallying, in the 80s especially. Group B rally cars dominated. They were eventually banned due to how dangerously quick they were. But one of the best things about Group B rallying was that it gave us homologation specials. These are the vehicles which had to be built by the manufacturers who wanted to go rallying in order for them to be allowed to do so. They were road-going versions of those rally cars. Stuff like the Delta, the Audi Quattro, etc. They are some of the coolest cars you can get, not just for rallying. There are also touring car ones like the BMW E30 M3, the Mercedes 190 Evo, and even Le Mans cars as well, like the CLK GTR, the Elise GT1, etc. Homologation specials are some of the coolest road cars you can get, and some of the rarest. So this vehicle is answering the question which nobody asked. What if Fiat had made a Group B rallying Panda? Now that may sound like a ridiculous notion, but it's actually not. The Panda is the perfect starting point for a Group B rally car. It's small, it's efficient, and it just does the job. That's exactly what you'd want from a rally car. Think Renault 5 Turbo, think Peugeot 205 T16 and various others. Now what we've done in this build is we've built what a road-going homologation Panda could have been like. So we haven't gone insane on the specs. I've tried to keep it realistic as to what something like this could have been like, but at the same time, of course, having fun with it. Now, as far as the visuals, it is a non-premium car, of course, so there's virtually nothing that you can do to the body apart from painting it. Now, as far as the rims, I've fitted it with P525N, I believe they're called Polyphony Digital rims. They're kind of like steel rims, essentially. And as far as the colour, I wanted to go for something that looked appropriately dated and appropriately oddball, as many homologation cars often are. So I went for a colour called Beans, which actually comes from the Nissan dealer, a couple of the Micras in particular, and other vehicles also, and that's the colour that I've gone for with the body, and as you can see, colour-coded with the rims as well. So visually, that's all I've done. So first of all, we'll go over to the mechanical tuning garage, of course, and then take it out to a racetrack to see if this is a convincing homologation special. Now, being as it is a fictional custom vehicle, we of course don't have to stick to certain power levels, weight levels, etc. So we can pretty much build it as to what we want. Now, I would encourage personal variation, of course. This is just the stuff that I've gone for because it feels right to me what this car could have been like. But obviously, if you feel differently, you can build it differently. Now, as you can see, it sits at the 450 pp level, so it could potentially be useful for racing as well. Now, I've gone for sports soft tyres. I've left the brakes stock because, as usual with these builds, you don't want it to feel too good. It still needs to feel grounded in reality. As far as suspension, we've got the ride height on 120, front and rear. Springs on 325 and 2. The dampers and anti-roll I've reduced down to 2, again for that realistic feel. Neutral camber and toe, you just don't need them in this car. We'll come back to the gearbox in just a second. Just like with the brakes, I've left the clutch and flywheel stock. As far as the diff, I've opted for the lowest initial torque, highest acceleration and lowest braking. As far as power, and of course, as I said, there's plenty of room for variation here, I opted for the kind of power that I felt this car could have had. It sits somewhere between vehicles like your Renault 5, etc., and the Peugeot 205, that kind of area. Not insane power, but certainly enough to make it a seriously quick car. So I've gone for a Stage 2 engine tune, sports computer, manifold, cat, high-range turbo and intake tuning, plus, as I think I mentioned, an oil change, then reduce the power to 98.1%, and as far as the weight, we've got all of the weight reduction fitted, and then I've added a 51 kilo ballast to bring us up to 705 kilos, and I've put that all the way to the back to even up the weight distribution a little bit. Finally, for the gearbox itself, I've gone for an auto setting of 130, as you can see. Then for the individual gears, 2.8, 2, 1.5, 1.2, 1, and 870, with a final drive of 3.8. Now this car only tops around 130 or so miles per hour, maybe a little bit over, but that's realistic. A real rally car like that would have a shorter ratio gearbox. It wouldn't have an incredible top speed, so that feels, again, authentic. It's more about handling and acceleration. So that's it overall for what I've opted to do for the build, and as I said, feel free to change stuff around to make it suit you personally. But now let's finally take it out to a track to see in particular how it handles, but also how it performs in a straight line. One of the main advantages, of course, of having a vehicle like this with around 170 or so horsepower, real or otherwise, is that you've got so much less weight than almost all of the other homologation cars, especially if you compare it to something like a Delta or a Quattro. It's far, far lighter than those cars, and also far smaller, of course. Personally, I'm really happy with this car. It's very fun to drive. The suspension has a little bit of sway and give to it, which is realistic. It's not a race car, of course. The acceleration is quick. It gets through its gears very rapidly, as it should, and that adds to the fun factor. The top-end performance, as I said, isn't that great, but again, that makes it feel all the more authentic. So overall, if you do decide to use some variation on this fictional what could have been Group B tune for the Panda, obviously I hope you find it first and foremost a fun vehicle, but also potentially even useful in racing, and it is a highly competitive car, this one, and you would like to keep up with other builds like this in the future, then hit subscribe down below to do that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.